I remember talking to one of my colleagues on a Monday morning, and she had like red eyes. Yogi, I spent 18 hours for last 3 days doing prepaid accounting of 300 invoices one by one. No breaks, no weekends, no time with family. Maxima as an agentic AI platform for enterprise accounting, whose singular goal is to help companies eventually arrive at a SOX controlled real-time close.
Insane companies you're working with, like Fandom and Scale AI, spot on and rippling.
So a very simple way to think about it is our product is a fresh out of college, junior person, very diligent, who works very hard and just keeps cranking away, but seeks your help sometimes and doesn't go rogue on you inside your financials.
And doesn't complain about working weekends and evenings.
Welcome to Tech Finance. I'm your host, Sasha Orloff, repeat founder and current CEO of Puzzle, and self-professed finance nerd. On this show, we dive into the pulse of B2B fintech, from newly funded startups transforming the office of the CFO to major industry shifts, deals, and partnerships that are reshaping how we think about finance. You'll hear the most important developments, essential analysis, and of course, AI innovations. This show is brought to you by Puzzle and the Turpentine Podcast Network. Let's dive in.
All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Tech Finance by Turpentine, which is part of the Andreessen Horowitz Podcast Network. This show is for founders of finance teams, so we get to uncover the people and the stories and the strategies that are shaping the future of finance and accounting. I'm Sasha, founder and CEO of Puzzle, and today I am so excited to be joined by Yogi Goel, who is the founder and CEO of Maxima, who, if you have not been in the news at all recently, have missed that they just raised 41 million from none other than Kleiner and RedPoint for their AI accounting startup. And that's what we love here. Newly funded and exciting startups doing cool stuff in accounting and finance space. So this is going to be a fun one. Let's dive in. Yogi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sasha, for having me. Super excited to have a conversation.
All right, let's just dive right in. EY, Citigroup, Barclays, Rubrik. What was the moment that you realized I got to go solve something? And what are you solving?
Yeah. So I've been lucky to be an operator in the accounting and finance space for the last 20 years. And there were two big issues that I observed for last 20 odd years. One was at all these companies, the record to report operations or the operation of accounting for financial transactions was incredibly painful and inefficient. We had to constantly throw bodies at the problem. The data or the financial reports were very late, which had impact on how quickly you could make decisions. And the folks who were doing it weren't super thrilled about it. I had honestly seen 40% plus attrition, people taking holiday health breaks to fix their necks, their backs, and just being unhappy about it, quitting the profession to become real estate agents, quitting the profession to become insurance brokers and such. And to me, it felt like something had to change. And there was an opportunity, especially when I saw LLMs and agents coming together to change the game here, not just for the companies, but honestly for the operators here, the accountants. I've sort of grown in this space for 20 years. And one question I always ask is why is it most CFOs are not from accounting background? We should ask and pause this. Why is it that 99% of the CFOs are not? It's not like they're not smart enough. They know their numbers. They are career aspirational. Why aren't they? And I have a theory. I'd love to share that.
Yeah, please. I'm eagerly waiting to hear the answer.
My theory is in the last it used to not be the case before. A lot of CFOs, if you look at 1970s and 80s, were actually with accounting background. But over time, what happened was as the data kept increasing and the business complexity kept increasing and the accounting rules become more and more arcane, accountants got really gummed up in doing the close work. Therefore, they were not quote unquote strategic. They were not building the relationship and they never got promoted. And to me, this annoyed the hell out. At least there should be 50-50 probability between FP&A and accounting folks to become CFOs. So because of all these compelling reasons, we felt like there's an opportunity to come together and solve the problem and elevate not just the companies, but also the profession.
So you're going through this process, you're working in these organizations, you're seeing this attrition, you're seeing this sort of shift in leadership and the role. And you come to a point in your journey where you're like, I have to solve this. What was the triggering point that got you to step one of Maxima, day one?
So the trigger point around deciding to quit and take a different path, because I was on kind of the CFO path, was when I saw a great match between incredible amount of pain, and I'll detail what those pains were, and an opportunity to solve that pain. So the pain was at inside my companies that I worked at, Rubrik, City, and others. This aspect during the last 2 weeks, the last 15 days of the month, everything burning, people unhappy, don't call me, and for the CFO office, close accurately, close faster was number one priority, even though we had other things like burn less money, be more profitable, and all of that. And when I talked to my team members, I remember talking to one of my colleagues on a Monday morning, and she had like red eyes and looking very disheveled. And it's like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, Yogi, I spent 18 hours for last 3 days, just nonstop working each of the day. And this is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And what were you doing? Hey, I was doing prepaid accounting of 300 invoices, one from Snowflake, one from Tableau, one from Salesforce. I said, why was this so painful? Don't we have the data in the upstream systems? Yeah, but you have to pull the data, and then you have to go and check with the business owners if the service actually got started on that. And because we were at a complex company with very high standard on accuracy, you have to ensure that the work gets reconciled. And she had to do it for 300 invoices one by one. No breaks, no weekends, no time with family. And unfortunately, the work doesn't really move the needle for the company. So this was the problem as an example. And the solution was, as I saw computers showing brains, right? They can think, and then not only think, they can act. We felt like there was an opportunity to create the system of intelligence and action, which could do the prepaid work, as an example, in a very systemized fashion on a daily basis. And we thought this was an opportunity to come together, hire some of the best engineers, and actually solve the problem.
Was that the first pain point that you guys solved? Was helping with sort of prepaid amortization or prepaid rev rec?
Actually, no. We were in this broader enterprise accounting space. And then when we spoke to a lot of our customers, they pulled us in that direction. Prepaid was actually not the first one. We were talking to complex companies because we knew that, based on my experience, the problem becomes a lot more complex after 1,000 people and beyond when you start thinking about auditability and all of that. So when we spoke to a lot of these customers, they said, we have big problems in journal entries, in reconciliations, and in fluxes. So we built all these three things together, and we are doing all sort of journal entries. So the first was around, I think, cash, a different type of repeat transaction was a big one. Then we did PTO, then we did accruals, and then so on. But it's around after the transactions have happened. We automate the journals, we automate the reconciliations, we write the fluxes, we find anomalies, kind of a pre-audit.
Yeah, that's exciting. How do you describe Maxima to the audience?
Yeah. Very simply, think of Maxima as an agentic AI platform for enterprise accounting, whose singular goal is to help companies eventually arrive at a SOX controlled real time close. The way it works is we plug with any of your ERPs so that you are not, as an enterprise company, do the brain surgery of replacing the ERP. I know the nightmare that comes to my mind when someone tells me to replace the ERP.
I've had a few guests on the show that have talked about the challenges and the excitement that when you finally get it done. But yeah, it's hard.
And our agents automate the human work required in pulling the data from upstream systems, doing the accounting transactions, posting it into the ERP, doing the reconciliation, writing the descriptions and all. So that's sort of the best way to think about it. For the folks who may not be in accounting, think that all of your accounting colleagues got 4 AI colleagues, who does the repeat same work over and over again based on the set of instructions that you gave them. And the other two are constantly looking for errors and anomalies, kind of a pre-audit before the auditors arrive, but doing on a daily basis so that not only your numbers are correct, but if you have any fiscally bad decisions being made, you can fix it beforehand versus kind of staring at the floor when the CFO comes knocking.
So the vision, now that you're able to articulate the vision, it's clear, it's a known problem. Everybody listening, including me, has either experienced this problem or is about to experience this problem because it exists and it gets more complicated. How do you think about where to wedge into the market? Like, how did you find your first couple customers and how did that evolve to where you are today with Max?
Yeah. So Our initial hypothesis was this problem is, and I've seen that both as an auditor and a rubric, that the problem gets more and more complex as the business becomes larger and more complex. So when rubric was Series A, Series B, accounting was simple, our scrutiny was not that high. We were making simplistic determinations. But as we started thinking about going public in 2 to 3 years, getting a PCA or B audits meant everything had to be like T's and I's had to be figured out, right? So the wedge for us has been companies which are large and high growth and which have complex structures. So a lot of entities, a lot of currencies, and who have to repeatedly do the same thing over and over again. A simple company early on with one entity, one currency, if they have, cloud cost accrual, they will just put it in one cost center and then accrue for it and done. But after a certain scale, if you have that same cloud cost accrual of 1 million will have to be booked across 25 currencies and 25 entities. And that's a lot of repeat work that has to be done over and over again. And we feel agents are great at that. So those are the three things we look for. Large companies, 1,000 people or above, complex structure, which essentially means adding a lot of headcount, and which are high growth, which are up to a certain bar, if that makes sense.
Hey, we'll get back to the conversation in a moment after a word from our sponsors. All right. One of my favorite tools that I use and we use is Notion. Notion is used by thousands of startups around the world as their connected workspace for everything from engineering specs to new hire onboarding to fundraising. Notion has a special offer for listeners. 6 months of free Notion with unlimited AI, value of over $6,000. So you can access the limitless power of AI right inside of Notion to build and scale your company and team with one tool. Get 6 months free of Notion with unlimited AI, along with custom templates when you apply for notion.com/startups/puzzle. Once again, that's notion.com/startups/puzzle. Go for it. Building a company is hard enough. You shouldn't have to second guess your numbers too. One day, an investor might ask you a question that you just can't answer. The next, you realize your books aren't as clean as you thought. Sound familiar? Puzzle is rethinking accounting from the ground up with an AI-first ledger that eliminates repetitive tasks and gives you real-time financial clarity so you can focus on running your business, not fixing spreadsheets. Accounting should work the way you do, fast, intuitive, and built for the future. Come check us out at puzzle.io.
Yeah. And then tell me a little bit about the journey from, you found a couple people to now insane companies you're working with, like Fandom and Scale AI, Spot On and Rippling, and Built, like non-trivial companies, big, real, serious companies.
Mhm. We saw a common pattern in all these companies, which is they all had a system of record out there of different types. And they had different upstream data, the transactional data sitting in different places, CRM, HRIS, and the billing system, and so on. And if you were to step back and take a 100 feet view, you would see a repeat pattern, download data, do some data transformation, or like get some inputs from colleagues, do the accounting of it, post it. And when we asked, we saw this was exactly happening at a lot of these places. So we said, why don't we build agents which can behave like a human on these things based on instructions given by the accountant? Yeah.
Well, it's exciting stuff. I've been doing this now for a couple of years, sort of in the podcast. And when we think about some of the technical breakthroughs over the years, the vision of what theoretically could be possible is existing. I remember everybody being like, I wonder what theoretically in the future of AI is going to be. We might have different takes along the way. When we're thinking now about what's the state of AI and agents today, what do you think the kind of technical breakthrough is that separates Maxima from, just going to Claude or Anthropic or ChatGPT directly?
So we have put accuracy and controls as a center of our company from very early days. Part of it, unfortunately, comes from my audit background, perhaps. We believe that we used to say this in the audit world that if you can't prove your work or show your work to the auditors, then the work didn't get done, right?
Well, I
Uh,
remember that from my math class. It's like you do a math proof in undergrad and you're like, I have the answer. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't count unless you show me all of your work. And they're like,
Exactly.
but is the answer right? And you're like, yeah, but it doesn't matter unless you show me all the work. So I'm laughing because like it resonates very strongly.
Yeah. So based on that, what we realized was in an accounting world, there are two different categories of work or workflows. One is deterministic things where you need deterministic operators, where I would say that's like 80-85% of the work. And then there are other which are very probabilistic, where you need some judgment, some heuristics. And that's where LLMs can come up with a good suggestion. So we've come up with this idea where our agents can tool call the deterministic operators that Maxima has built. So our agent can tool call the journal entry preparation module that you've built, which can do the data 7-step data transformation. If you've looked at products like DBT and Alteryx, where you can do the data transformation, we can do that. And then the deterministic things are basically where the tool is the LLM at the back. And it's coming up with we have obviously taught it and it is coming up with the recommendation. But I don't think that is to a point where you should just hit approve on it because we want a human to review it. Only then an auditor would stand behind it and sign off on it, right? That, hey, there was a human approving it and making the call. So on the system of action side, that's a big innovation. Ability to gather data using deterministic operators, make specific calculations, and then have our agent call on that tool to do the posting of it or do the reconciliation, if that makes sense. The other aspect which I mentioned about our product is this system of intelligence. When we speak with our engineers who have built other fintech products at companies like Robinhood and others, they have been using LLMs and ML to find anomalous behavior in trading for fraud and others. I believe that that product can be used, that skill can be used for accounting as well, where you are proactively giving the controller alerts on what could be anomalous. And by not just looking at time series of data, but also benchmarking it against outside data to figure out what's anomalous. Like when I was in that role where I had to sub-certify for SOX, I was kind of just doing this, crossing my fingers, certifying.
It's like he's holding up his fingers crossed for those of you just
Yes,
listening and
sorry.
not
Yes,
watching.
I was
Yeah.
yes. Because quite honestly, the data inside the ERP is a heap of numbers. And you're being asked to sign off on something where you have 2% of awareness. And this is no more a human scale problem. We think it's a machine scale problem. Just like identifying cyber attack inside a perimeter of a large company is no more a human scale problem. We still we feel figuring out financial errors is a no more a human scale problem. And Sasha, I don't know if you're following, this is a real issue. Like last year, 140 companies in the public companies in the US had to restate their financials. So clearly throwing bodies for these multinationals is not a problem, right?
You talk a lot about sort of how AI can help with this stuff. I didn't know that's the number. That's a lot. That's high. And you have to think, right? It can no longer just be a human problem. You talk about a couple things about Maxima, the kind of co-writer model, the 100% audibility standard, and sort of avoiding the black box problem. Can you talk about each of those things a little bit?
Yeah. So back to that assistant AI as AI colleague thinking, the framework I gave, two AI colleagues helping you do the step work and two AI colleagues evaluating and looking for errors. The auditability concept is very ingrained where we show our work along the way. Each company has different accounting or data treatment rules based on their accounting policy. So you should be, without talking to IT, without bringing IT, you should be able to build your own deterministic operators, right? So company A might be accounting for payroll accruals in a certain way for Canadian employees. Company B may be doing in a slightly different way, right? And you should be able to configure it on your own. So that's your thinking on how it's very, very flexible, right? Then co-writing part is, oh, you have the repeat tasks, which require high amount of data to be pulled and processed and then posted. Machines are good at that. And it will not go rogue and post things to your journal ledger without your permission. So everything is segregation of duty and approval of multi-step. So when your boss calls saying, hey, how did this transaction happen? You can't say that Maxima did it. There was someone out there who was doing it. And then Maxima will show the work. So that's on the auditable side.
You talked about the sort of the co-writer model. That makes sense. The audibility standard, that makes sense. And then the other concern, even with those in place, which I think is a really nice design pattern, is that accounting and AI is still a black box.
Yeah.
How do you think about sort of the reality of trying to solve a deterministic, traceable, auditable system with a black box system?
Yeah. And that's why we are doing this hybrid approach, right? Where on one hand, the Maxima agents are calling on our deterministic operators. So you can exactly see the work. On the places which are probabilistic, it's coming up with a suggestion with its reason for coding it this way. So, hey, you have this $10,000 table and we are expensing it over 100 months based on this policy. And do you agree with it? And the human comes and says, yes, I do. And then we show that how did that whole work got done versus no explanation. Just take 10,000 divided by 100 and now you can't defend your work. And that explanation is mentioned it for the person. They can edit it, they can disagree with it, they can decline it. So a very simple way to think about it is our product is a fresh out of college, junior person, very diligent, who works very hard, doesn't get tired about boring, mundane stuff, and just keeps cranking away. But seeks your help sometimes and doesn't go rogue on you inside your financials.
Yeah, and doesn't have to complain about working weekends and evenings because yeah, they don't care. So one of the things that I think a lot of us as founders sort of get excited about is like the end results. When you finally sort of get passionate about building something, you put it in front of a customer and it happens. On your website, you talk, there's some incredible testimonials. Let's see the outcomes. So the Scale AI quote, which I'm going to read from the website now. We're closing 2 to 3 days faster with over 98% automation. It's the closest thing to an easy button I've ever seen in accounting. Tell us a little bit more of just some of the customer stories. What are some of the results that you're seeing from Maxima and how it's transforming your client experience?
Yeah. So Maxima's promise to our customers is within their month-end financial reporting or close process, we want to do three things for you. We want to make your month-end accounting process faster. We want to make it more accurate with more controls, and we want to make it less painful. So cut time, inefficiencies, and errors from your close process. And over, we deliver that for the customers where they have given us those workflows. So Scale AI is an example. It's on our website for some of the things that they were doing. They had a lot of people who were collecting data from different data sources upstream. First, it was for different bank accounts. They were manually coding all the banks or preparing journal entries, doing the reconciliation manually, posting it. Then the same thing happened for payroll, PTO, and so on. Then eventually at the month end, they were getting all the data out of the ERP and writing what changed. And in my mind, after using Maxima, our machine has been able to help them get up to 98% of what it gets done on its own. All they have to do is look at the work of machines of Maxima and said approve. And it gets approved accurately and it gets posted and it explains itself because there enough data context out there. We have done a lot of hard work in maintaining this data lineage between transaction to trial balance. In legacy ERPs, I've always found this annoying that they ask you to cut the data context between the transaction and trial balance because for whatever reason, there's not enough space and such. We feel there's real gem inside the transactions, which then it gets summarized the trial balance. So we want to maintain that. And companies like Scale AI have found immense amount of value there. By automation now, so that's the first order effect. They're able to close faster, right? Because the work is getting done on a daily basis versus waiting for the month end. You can ask machine to do the same process 30 times in a month. You can't ask that for a human. And it's a lot more accurate because of the deterministic point I made. And the third huge benefit is for your controls testing for SOX. Automated controls do not require to be tested so often, right? Because once you look at a math that just works, you try the output once or maybe 3 or 4 times, then you don't have to test it every single time. A human work has to be tested for accuracy every single time. And obviously, this vision of a real-time accounting that they are getting. So we are not going to say that only because of Maxima they're able to make faster decision, but yes, because Maxima is able to report the financial numbers for them faster, they are able to deploy new business decisions faster, hire people faster, greenlight engineers and GPUs and whatnot faster. And we see the same thing over and over again for spot on for Rippling. Rippling was doing the same thing for 2.4 million transactions a month. 2.4 million transactions, right? They had an army of people who were downloading data, who was converting into journal entries, who they were doing transaction matching, they were uploading it into GL, then they were downloading it from the GL and then explaining it.
So we've heard stories. Y Combinator or Sam Altman saying, with AI, we think there's going to be a one-person billion-dollar company in the future. And we've heard other people in the space on this podcast and on social media say, we believe there's going to be a one-person finance team sort of companies. You have a quote on your website also from Rippling, which says, with Maxima, we cut cash reconciliation time by more than 50%. And we've reallocated 4 FTEs to higher value work while strengthening our SOX controls.
Yeah.
Do you have a view of the future? Like, what do you think the view of accounting or accountants or internal accounting teams is going to be in the future?
Yeah. So I don't have this one person type of view. Enemy is not people's salaries. Our enemy is errors. Our enemy is inefficiency. Our enemy is this incredible mundanity and the frustration that each individuals have. That's what we are going after. I don't know if you're following, but accountants are leaving the profession in droves, and every company needs. You can't find accountants. I used to do a lot of recruiting, so we want to change that. And if I take a longer view, if we are able to succeed in what we are looking to do, just like people don't spend 30 minutes anymore to do a 8 character long calculation, they just do it in a spreadsheet. You won't have people doing these mundane repeat tasks. They will move on to higher order things, which could be supporting your company in new product launches, supporting your company for an M&A transaction, supporting your company for how to account for a new revenue packaging or price packaging you came. And I think that's the more fun thing. Why people like you and I studied accounting and worked at Big Four? Nobody wants to go through 300 prepaid bills and do the accounting of it. So that's my take.
And, I would say some big name investors agreed with you. How did you sort of know what was the right time to start fundraising for this round? And what do you think finally clicked for investors? Because as you mentioned at the beginning of this, accounting has finally become a sexy category again for investors, and it hasn't for a very, very long time. What do you think changed? And tell us a little bit about how the round came together.
Yeah. So our seed was raised even before Maxima was started by Kleiner. And they had seen this unique team where there was a deep domain knowledge and deep domain passion, plus experience of top notch AI engineers who had built large scale financial systems at companies like Robinhood, billing systems for Netflix and Twitter. And these were working flawlessly, accurately, and such. I don't believe in this notion. There's a lot of things going around these days, built for accountants by accountants. Just like a Formula One driver will not or cannot build a really good Formula One car, we feel like to really build large scale AI systems that work accurately, you need AI engineers. You don't need accountants building it. You need accountants like me who can give the empathy and the domain knowledge and what matters versus not. But you shouldn't be using a product that's just coded by Yogi or an accountant. That's my thing. So the folks like Kleiner really admired the team. They admired the fact that just like legal profession is getting redone by companies like Harvey, accounting profession needed an assistant who can amplify without asking the companies to do the hard yards or brain surgery of replacing the ERP. I firmly think most enterprise companies do not want to be put in this corner, which is either replace your ERP or don't use AI in finance. People want a third option, which we offer to them. And the last thing is just kind of customer feedback, right? So these are serious investors who talk to serious customers. They do their diligence. And a lot of customers were talking about the great output they are having. When RedPoint came for a Series A, we were preempted. We had not even used 90% of our Series C money, but they had seen incredible traction and work. So they preempted us. And we felt like it gave us the cash to go higher and faster to achieve our ambitions. So we took it.
So in today's world, like the fundraising, there's always this talk about fundraising, and it's like it's the easiest time it ever has been to fundraise. It's the hardest time in the world it's ever been to fundraise. Sounds like you were in a very fortunate position to be preempted. What's your advice for people listening as they're starting to think about fundraising in today's environment?
Yeah. So in life in general or in business in general, I don't think there are any golden rules out there, including the suggestion I'm about to make. Don't listen to anything and follow anything blindly. So you have to do your own thinking. Whatever someone is telling you is best practices. And one of the best practice I'll tell you is you got to know the game you are playing. And so if you are building, electric car company, then be ready and understand the capex that it'll take and raise a lot of money because you will have a bunch of failures. But if you are building something which perhaps is not capital intensive, then don't just raise unsustainable amount of money, even if you are fortunate to raise that, so that you will only disappoint your team members and employees and investors later on. So you have to know the game you are playing and then which space you are in. And then obviously raising when you have the right leverage and right story, you should always do that versus kind of, being at the other end of it. Those are the two best practices that come to my mind. I've gone through Series B through IPO journey at Rubrik, and I know that you have to do it in phases. You can't be like, I'm going to raise today and then up until IPO, it'll figure itself out. No, I think of it's like trying to climb Mount Everest. You can't decide from day one that I'm going to stop only at Mount Everest. You have to plan for every phases and raise for the next phase, hit, deliver, come back, take a breather, raise again, and so on. That's my thinking.
There's hypothesis that we have. Sometimes we come into problems like you, very knowledgeable about the problem set, but that sort of can evolve. I'd love for you to paint a picture of what was the vision day one and what is the vision today? Either did it get bigger, smaller? Is it the same thing? You're just right at it. And then afterwards, is there anything that surprised you? We were like, this is the problem, and I'm going to go in and this is it. And you're like, oh my God, this is a bigger problem, or this is something that I learned through this process.
Yeah. So I'll give you what stayed constant and something that changed. So what stayed constant is our belief that big complex companies is where the problem is most acute, and our strong belief that if giving companies the easiest on ramp to adopt agents and AI is the goal. With the real results, then you shouldn't necessarily ask them to change their system of record. That has stayed constant in the segment we are going after. What has changed is this realization that based on the type, the industry or the category of company you're going after, what's problematic to them within the closed process could be different. So in my career, I've mostly worked with software companies and fintech companies. I've not worked with, let's say, an oil and gas company. But when we spoke with oil and gas company, their pain in accounting or close was figuring out capex expenses for their oil drills, as an example. Or a telecom infrastructure company had to figure out what's the status of the accrual for the tower expenses. But for software company, RevRec was a problem. And this was a little surprising to me because I used to think of accrual as a micro topic. Now I have started understanding, thinking of accrual as bodily pain. Your bodily pain might be your head is hurting, and my bodily pain might be my stomach is hurting. And you have to be able to build a tool which is generic enough, which addresses a lot of these problems. And certain problems you can't address, and therefore those are not your ICP.
So, a lot of our audience are CFOs or accountants at companies. We hear constantly they're getting pressure to have to adopt AI more and more in their business and operations. And a lot of times that can be a quite intimidating thing, even in today's environment right now. How do you get people comfortable with the AI or the starting point where they are getting this pressure? And the choices are like do something yourself, use like a Maxima, move to a modern, like one of the new challenger AI ERPs. They're all viable solutions to trying to do stuff. What do you view as the pitch to that CFO that is on one of the big sort of ERPs today in saying like Maxima's a good solution for you in this reason or this way?
So the first thing I'll say, a suggestion is you have to befriend and accept AI as a reality versus being scared of it and run away from it. Just like any tool back in the day, I'm old enough to hear my colleagues and others talk about in early days of internet, where people were so scared of putting anything on the internet that hey, things might get stolen. So you can't duck away from it. I think you should adopt it and then accept it that it's here to stay. Once you have that recognition, then think of the best, the simplest on ramp. So there's a crawl, walk, run here. And usually, again, if you think about why the chat GPT moment was so amazing, is because it was doing two things that none of the tools were doing before. It had intelligence and it could take action. It couldn't just, and that's what I would say, look at things inside your accounting organization in this example, which are relatively painful, where you don't have to do a lot of brain surgery, and see which tool potentially Maxima can help you. It's not going to kill you because eventually you have the human in loop, and don't let the AI go rogue. Have the human come in and look at things. So think of it as a human amplification versus, give everything to an AI overnight situation.
I love it. And so it's not surprising. Maxima has raised the round to launch, and I'm pulling from your website, the first agentic AI platform for enterprise accounting, which is quite exciting. Where can people learn more? How should they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so check us out on our website and LinkedIn, maxima.ai. We have ways to get in touch with the sales through our contact us button. Folks can reach out to me directly. It's a very simple email address, yogi, Y-O-G-I, at maxima.ai. And I would love to have a conversation.
That's fine. Well, thanks for coming on. Where did the name Maxima come from?
For those who may not remember from your early geometry classes, maxima in math means the highest point of any plane, right? And our long-term mission is we want to help every company maximize their long-term financial performance by making their financial data accessible, accurate, and actionable. So we thought of coming up with name Maxima, which could first achieve each team member, each finance person achieve their local maxima, their career maxima, and in exchange help their company reach their long-term financial maxima. That's why we felt like it was a good name where both things can be in synergy.
I love it. I love it. Well, congratulations on the new round. Congratulations on Maxima. And for everybody listening, check it out, maxima.ai.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Tech Finance with Puzzle and Turpentine. If you got value from this episode, please share it with anybody building or funding the future of technology. And please leave us a review wherever you're listening and tell me about what you want to hear more of. If you're looking for accounting software you'll actually love to power your company, check out puzzle.io, the modern accounting platform for the AI era. Tech Finance is part of Turpentine, the awesome podcast network behind Econ 102 with Noah Smith, Turpentine VC, Complex Systems with Patrick McKenzie, and so many more.